So we're going to take a look at Phillip Stanley, who is actually one of our locals here at Kerwin's, and Nizar Sarhan, who I have seen at events, a lot of Star City events when I go typically. Usually he's there. I believe he's a Jersey player. So
I know a handful of guys from Germany here, like we were talking about earlier. With how MCQs you got to travel, like I know I've heard some people like saying they're from like Jersey and other parts of New York. You know, you like I said, you got to travel for these things. So I would not be shocked if like we started playing again, or like if I started playing again and I just constantly kept seeing people that were from quite a distance away. So here we got Nizar with a turn 1 Inquisition. Well, obviously we can't take the lands, can't take the Cryptic Command. There's some interesting choices here.
There's some cool ones. To answer your question, Funwill, Infect ended up winning.
Yep, within 3. In game 3, Infect 1 on turn 3.
Yep.
So that was an exciting match.
It was awesome. Here from the Inquisition, I'm assuming Phil's just playing like snow permanent good stuff.
I'd imagine, like, yeah, we got the Astrolabes, obviously, the Ice Fang Kodals, Ren and 6s. So, yeah, it looks like he's just playing Tamir Control, effectively. You got your typical removal spells, some counter spells, Snapcasters, Ice Fang, Jace, Ren and 6. Yeah, so he's just playing Tamir Control, which, with having the added benefit from Ice Fang, Quaddle, Arkham's Astrolabe, and Ren and 6, like, it's probably a pretty decent viable deck now. Ooh, Tidehouse Scholar making a modern comeback. I'm a fan.
I like it. I think it's awesome. I think, looking from what we have here, Sarhan, I see the word Death's Shadow.
Ooh.
Fan favorite at one point in time for a lot of people.
So Death Shadow making a little bit of a comeback, but I see your not typical color combination there on the field so far.
We have Mardu going on, it looks like. The staple cards, the Death Shadow itself, Street Wraith, Thoughtseizes, Inquisitions, so all those are
I feel like you're always choosing, like, it's always going to obviously be black. I feel like it's either usually green-white, for Abzan, because I still think Abzan version of Death Shadow with Auras of Charm and all those other goodies are still insane. But Mardu is also definitely a good choice as well, because you do get choices like Ranger Captain of Eos in the white. If he felt like it, he could probably even be playing Seasoned Pyromancer, but I don't see any in his list, so he's not worrying about that one. But your typical stock list, like on your black cards, you got Liliana the Veil. Since you're playing red, you get Kolaghan's Command and Tamir Battle Rage. So it's usually, I feel, blue in that scenario. But, I felt like going a little white action, which is so far is working because you get the Tidehouse Scholars, which I think are pretty good in Modern right now. Just stripping hands apart is always a good thing.
It's definitely cool. You get, the cool thing now is he has, is that 4 Siren Clearings and 1 Sunbathed Canyon?
Yeah, those so definitely help with, like, you have the mana fixing with those, but then just being able to cycle those later on is definitely helpful. Just trying to find, like, action. Because, you're going to spend, like, the beginning of your game just depleting their hand, which is inevitably depleting yours as well. So being able to just cycle some Canopy lands is pretty sweet.
And I think the biggest thing, like, biggest part of obviously what makes this deck viable is just the Ranger Captain of Eos, right?
Oh, definitely. Like, Ranger Captain was definitely a good print. I haven't seen it much in Modern, but I think it just hasn't found a really good home. Whereas here, it's pretty decent because, it's going to fetch up pretty much everything in your deck. Or at least, like, the things that you care about the most. And then from there on, if they deal with it, you got a big old giant Gurmag. But he does have a Hex Parasite, which, that's pretty sweet. I feel like that card has always been cool, but I don't know, I never felt it was good enough for Modern, but, he's making it work apparently. Like, maybe he just feels like with all the Planeswalkers, just being able to just kind of kill Planeswalker out of nowhere with this, and then you still have a creature afterwards that also got bigger. I think it's fair. As a one of, I think it's fine.
I mean, the other thing too is it has the, it's got that nice little Phyrexian mana symbol there, which is definitely beneficial for the Death Shadow.
Yeah, it definitely, it helps you out a little bit there. You can just kind of, dwindle away. You pay 1 mana, pay 2 life, remove a counter from somewhere. Your Teferi just went down to 1. Well, I'll just do this here, makes my Death Shadow bigger. It's definitely helpful. Right here, this Ren and 6 is going to do, some work getting back a land. But he could just, untap Hex Parasite, do some things, get rid of your Ren and 6, and I still have a creature that I could repeat the process with. So I'm a fan of Hex Parasite being a one-of. It's definitely not something I'd be yeah, let me jam a full 4. It's not that impactful.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious to see how Phil's deck plays out as the course. Right now, like you said, we have the Ren and 6, we have the Ice Fang Quaddle.
Yep.
He has a Spell Snare in his hand, which is a card that probably starts making a comeback.
I think Spell Snare is real good right now. It hits so many 2-drops in the format. It's definitely one of those ones that it falls in and out of favor in Modern quite often. Just because it really comes down to what you feel is going to be, super represented at a tournament. If you think it's going to be a bunch of Infect, Spell Snare is not the greatest, doesn't hit many cards in the deck. Everything else in the format, you got Ren and 6, Tidal Scholar, Ice Fang Quaddle, Snapcaster Mages, Stoneforge Mystic back in the format. There's a lot of good targets for Spell Snare right now.
Alright. Phil?
I think, Phil here, being kind of lost on, that double green, he can't do, he has an Assassin Trophy, and he just kind of has to throw a Snapcaster in the way because he wants to kill it, the Tidehouse Scholar, but it ended up just kind of backfiring, I feel like. That Kolaghan's Command, real good, making him discard a card, killing the Snapcaster Mage, and the Tidehouse Scholar got to get in for damage. And now here we were talking about how Nizar has nothing in hand, but he got to just play the Silent Clearing, so if he really feels like it, end of Phil's turn, he can fetch, thin his deck a little bit, and then crack the Silent Clearing and get another card. So that combination is pretty sweet.
And the big thing here is Nizar, in terms of fetching here and whatnot,
his own Kolaghan's Command. Blow up an artifact, deal 2 damage. That's a real good feel moment there. When you get to kill 2 things, with a Kolaghan's Command, I feel like it doesn't happen often. You're usually not choosing the artifact mode, but being able to blow up that Tidehouse Scholar and then killing off the Liliana definitely put Phil in a good position here because he cleared the board. He just can keep things alive. He has the Assassin's Trophy with the lands in play, whereas Nizar's just got nothing going on right now. He's got whatever he draws off a Silent Clearing and then whatever he draws for turn. Whereas Phil, even though he lost some cards from everything else, he's still got a decent amount going for him.
Yeah, and I think the thing is...
Another Silent Clearing cycle. And if Nizar's passing, I feel like he might not have a lot of action. He could have a removal spell and a land. If he had a creature, he probably would have just jammed it right there.
He just needs a Ranger Captain, right? And just hope to stick it?
Yep, Ranger Captain would definitely help him because not only is it one body, it's going to go and get you a second body. Another Tidehouse Scholar wouldn't have been horrible because he gets to look at Phil's hand again and really see what's going on and try to figure things out late game. I think here, just getting a normal Death Shadow or any other creature that doesn't give you extra benefit, like the Hex Parasite, is probably not what you would have wanted to draw. But unfortunately, he did kind of show us his hand a little bit. He's sitting on 2 lands, so Phil with that Kolaghan's Command, I think definitely put him in a good position to get back into this game. Because Nizar is just starting to draw lands now. He drew his 3rd Silent Clearing cycle that hit a Tamir Battle Rage. If we had a Death Shadow, that Battle Rage would be sick. But currently, right now, that is not the case.
Yeah, and I think just from here, if Nizar has nothing, just the Ren and 6, right?
Yeah,
just tick up.
Exactly. You just keep plussing, and then sooner or later you can start killing. You're gonna thin your deck, and you're just gonna have nothing but answers. For instance, Phil here is getting Thoughtseize. Sure, he could counter it with the Force Negation, but he is going to. I thought he was gonna maybe let him just look at his hand and be like, I don't care. My hand's awesome.
I think in this position though, Phil's just kind of probably feels like he can potentially just coast from here.
He probably figured, yeah, exactly. He's gonna coast. He'll just counter it anyways because obviously Nizar's not doing much, and now he doesn't get the information of what is Phil's hand. So I think countering there is also fine. I think like you had the options like you counter, not counter. Doesn't even really matter in that position. If anything, like you just get to save the information. So we get back Misty Rainforest from our discard pile with Ren and 6, play it for turn.
I mean,
I think Phil just like until he hits a creature, he's just gonna sit here and hang out and like make it so Nizar doesn't win the game. But as soon as Phil, I think, hits a creature, like if he hits his second Ice Fang Coatl, I think he just takes this game away. So Nizar definitely has to
I think
find a couple three. He has to draw back-to-back threats.
So he has Street Wraith. I think he's going to hard cast Street Wraith because Phil has a swamp on the battlefield. Well, he has multiple. But Nizar also has a Temur Battle Rage in hand. So does Phil have a way to get rid of this Street Wraith?
We've seen ways like Assassin's Trophy and stuff in there, so he still has so many options. Like we've seen, there's a Snapcaster Mage and an Assassin's Trophy in his graveyard, so we definitely know Phil has answers. It comes down to if Phil has the answer right here, right now. But he also doesn't have to necessarily have an answer for Street Wraith with his life total. He could have a response for the Temur Battle Rage, which we do see a Spell Snare in hand. So even if he doesn't kill the Street Wraith, he can just simply counter the Temur Battle Rage unless Nizar draws a second one.
And the cool thing about, I think from Phil's standpoint, right, you're not playing against Grixis Shadow. You don't have to worry about Stubborn Denial.
Oh, actually,
like
yeah.
that.
We knew about the Dead of Winter that we got back off of the Tidehouse. Honestly, here, I think it's interesting that Phil keeps getting back these fetch lands just because he is starting to get a low life total. You got to respect, like, he's playing red. Nizar has to have bolts and stuff. So I think here, playing the Field Rune in your hand and then just starting to constantly, I guess, actually, never mind. It doesn't really matter because Ren and 6 just ultimate. So I think that is probably just going to be the end of this game.
The Ren 6 Ultimate gives Retrace?
It gives instants and sorcery cards in your graveyard retrace. So that means now Force of Negation is live, Kulligan's Command is live, just so many spells are live. I think it would have also been fine if Phil waited one more turn to keep his Ren and 6. I don't think we needed to do it right then and there, but, you know, Phil does his way, I do my way. We can't all play the same game or else Magic would get boring.
And I just think this is kind of, you know, obviously Phil doesn't know what Nizar has in hand. And this is a scenario, I think, where most players are like, yeah, I'm super behind. This is probably just it. I definitely respect Nizar for, you know.
I definitely, yeah. Because, like, for instance, like I said, like, with Phillip constantly taking damage there from the pings over and over from the fetches, that was putting him real dangerously close in the Lightning Bolt territories. Which, looking over at Nizar...
There's the Death Shadow.
We finally have a Death Shadow, but I feel like that's not going to live long since we can just cast everything from our graveyard. So most likely what's going to happen is we're going to discard a land. He's going to choose Cryptic Command, counter draw, and Nizar's just going to be like, yep, I'm done with this, as you're slowly picking your Cryptic Command out of your graveyard. Ren and 6 ult, not fair. That was definitely real good there, especially because Phil already had a handful of lands, so he was going to be able to cast anything and everything for a while. Ren and 6 ult was awesome. I definitely like Phil's deck. It's different.
I know from what I've been told from a lot of our locals during our weekly Modern events, he's just been on this tear with this deck because nobody ever knows what he has because he has so many like one-ofs.
Yep.
And 2-ofs and things like that, so he always is constantly switching it for different things.
It's also one of those things, it's like the Niv Mizzet deck. Like, I've seen Matt play it multiple times over at my game store, but it's just like, if only one or two people are playing it, it is really hard to play test against or learn about it, just because not many people are out there giving it reps and, like, giving you a chance to get reps with it. So unless you, like, specifically sit down with these players and ask, hey, can I play against your deck? You kind of just got to play your deck as normal and hope it works out against it. Like, I've definitely been in that scenario where I'm like, well, I have no idea what could be in your deck, so I'm just going to play my deck the way it is and hope it works good enough. Which, same thing Nizar tried to do there, and just, as we saw, it came up a little short. Phil having tons of sweet answers in his deck. And then we get to see, like, what cool... Like, I think Nizar is going to have your typical things in his sideboard, so we got Yep, Alpine Moons, Fulminator Mages, Collective Brutality, Liliana the Veil, Plague Engineers, Colgan's Command, Stony Silence. If anything, like maybe the Burton Forge Tender and the Shenanigans you could call as like obscure, but even those have just been good cards in Modern for a while. Shenanigans really just coming out of nowhere. Whereas like on the Tamir side, yet again, tons of 1 and 2 ofs. You got Weather the Storm. That way, if he ever goes up against Storm, he just doesn't lose. Unborn Egos have been really growing in popularity in Modern. I've noticed like tons of black-blue decks have that in here.
It is a solid card.
It definitely is a good card. It can deal with a threat in one shot. I guess I just still didn't expect it to make it into Modern like it has. Like, there's maybe fringe sideboard cards here and there, but now I almost feel like it's becoming a staple in black-blue decks. And then you have your other good typical green cards, Pulse of Marasa, Scavenging Ooze, some more Abrupt Decays. Finally seeing a Ceremonious Rejection in a blue deck. It's like, man, no one respects Tron anymore. They got all these, like, land destruction cards. They're like, you're just never going to be able to cast your spells anyway, that I don't need this Ceremonious Rejection. Whereas I know whenever I played, I feel like it was always a 3 of. If I had less than 3 on my sideboard, I was like, man, I'm just going to lose as soon as I get up against Jund. Or up to Tron.
Card's just very good. I think... I mean, it's not a bad thing, like, Phil having that, and then he also has Force of Negation in the deck.
Yep.
Like, is that just... obviously against Tron, like you said, Tron's probably very hard for him, per se.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But yeah, Force of Negation is not going to help him too much against those Planeswalkers, so having or even, like... I know Eldrazi's kind of been going away, but... definitely, like, Eldrazi Death and Taxes is still definitely there. Same with regular Eldrazi, so I guess I respect Eldrazi too much to not have the Ceremonious Rejections. Because I always just feel like, you Reality Smash for me. I hate 2 for 1ing that thing, so if I can just 1 mana get rid of it, I'm okay with that.
Alright, so it looks like players are resolving some mulligans?
Yep, yeah, it looks like Phil just took his hand of 7, didn't care for it, he's throwing it back. Nizar's going to stick with his 7. He's on the play, so he's probably just going to try to be fast and aggressive out of the gate.
I really like Nizar 7. I saw Death Shadow, Thoughtseize, a couple lands, some Mishra's Baubles.
Oh yeah, that's exactly what you want. Phil over here, not a lot of action in this hand, but looks like he's going to keep it. Because he does have some answers, like... there's some lands, there's spell snares, it looks like a fatal push. So he definitely has some action, but it's definitely not the greatest hand for Phil. So it could be an interesting time here.
Let's see.
Well, it looks like Phil's going to want to keep his lands in the Astrolabes and just try to draw into cards. And he's going to pitch either a Snapcaster or a Spell Snare. I think that's fine. I don't know.
I feel like, so... Do you just not pitch Spell Snare because you're scared of the Tidehollow Scholar?
Well, it hits like the Tidehollow Scholars.
Like, what else are you really hitting? You're not.
Do we have anything else to hit?
I mean, you hit.
Yes, not really, because Death Shadow's on 1, Shriek's on 5, Gurmag's on 6 or 7, and then all the other things like Thoughtseize and.
Unless he assumes that Brutality comes in.
Yeah, but even then, like, unless you're expecting, like, a full play set of Brutalities, I actually kind of think, I think I would have taken the Snapcaster instead, because you can at least Fatal Push, Snapcaster, Fatal Push. The Spell Snare here just doesn't seem phenomenal. Like, I think I would have rather had Snapcaster in that scenario, especially because, like, right here, like, if you had Snapcaster or Fatal Push, it's like, well, which do I choose? Because if I choose Fatal Push, you're just going to Snapcaster it back. If I choose Snapcaster, you're still just going to have the Fatal Push. Because the Astrolabes, as long as there's a threat for him to deal with, you're not going to take an Astrolabe there because it would just kind of be feel bad almost.
Alright.
So we'll see how this goes. Like, obviously, Phil's just going to go land, Astrolabe, draw some extra cards, so he gets a free cycle, some mana fixing. I understand not taking an Astrolabe when there's already a second one. If there was just one, I think I probably would have taken that, so Phil would see one less card on top of that.
Let's see.
Oh, now it's getting a little awkward for Nizar.
Land. Fetching with Marsh Flats?
Yeah, which is nice there, because he went and Mishra's Bobbled himself first, so he, like, double-checked, like, do I want this card on top of my deck? Let me double-check. Oh, no, this card, I don't like it. All right, let's fetch it away, shock myself, so then he can go ahead and jam something on this turn, or he can pass the turn and then draw off the Mishra's Bauble, play another Mishra's Bauble, take a look at his opponent. So, getting lots of free information.
I think you just wait here, right? You just pass turn. Well, you play the Hex Parasite.
Yeah, with the Hex Parasite. Ooh, or you could actually do both, because he knows Phil doesn't have the answers in his hand unless he draws it off the Astrolabe, especially because he just saw a card off the top, which is a force negation for us now. So unless Phil specifically drew a removal spell off of Astrolabe, Nizar knows he's like in the clear right now to kind of start getting some damage in. So I think double jamming here is fine.
Let's see. Back
and Phil's just passing it back, so he probably doesn't have much going on. Oh, that Thoughtseize draw is real good for Nizar, because not only do we get to look at your hand, we're going to lose 2 life, and this Death Shadow's really about to punch you in the face. That was definitely a good draw for him.
I think Phil's just... It looks like he has a trophy. Oh, what do we got? We're getting blue?
Yeah, I could see him getting the blue over the red in this scenario, just because we do know he has the Spell Snare in hand, and he could have... Oh, he also has the Astrolabe, so it doesn't even matter what mana he gets there. So, actually, never mind. We had the Assassin's Trophy off the Astrolabe. That's unfortunate for Nizar. That would have been real good for him.
I think if I'm Phil, I just let the Thoughtseize.
Well, at this point, you would have to pitch 2 cards, which I don't think that's good enough. You definitely just let it resolve here. He's probably going to take the Force of Negation anyways, because he can't cast the Jace and Spell Snare isn't doing anything. But that Assassin's Trophy was actually pretty decent for Nizar, because not only is he going to take away a counterspell here, he can play his land for turn, and he has Kolaghan's Command up. So he can make Phil discard a card and buy back his Death Shadow if he takes the Force of Negation here. So he definitely has options. Because, the Jace doesn't do anything. We're 2 mana away from that. The Astrolabe, I think, is a fair pick because you just want Phil drawing less cards. And he can actually wait until Phil's upkeep to use the Kolaghan's Command, because then the Force of Negation won't be free.
Right, at that point.
And he doesn't have the 3 mana to cast it, so which it looks like is exactly what he's doing. He's going to fetch Shock. I'd imagine Kolaghan's Command, discard a card, get back Death Shadow, which at this point Phil probably just discards the Jace because that doesn't do anything, or the Spell Snare. He's going to keep the Force of Negation, I'd imagine.
That makes sense. Yeah, buy back the Shadow, force you to...
Which, getting that land off of the Assassin's Trophy was really good for Nizar, because he wouldn't have been able to do that if he didn't get the Assassin's Trophy.
Pitch the Spell Snare.
So, if we draw Runner land, we can go Force of Negation Jace. But if we don't hit the land there, we have to not use Force of Negation the way I feel we want to right now.
So we have no land pass from Phil back to Nizar. Oh.
Which, obviously, we're just going to jam this here. Phil got to see a single card. He missed the land drop, which means Jace can't bounce it back. Oh, with the Ranger Captain.
There it is.
It's definitely looking good, because that Force Negation's not countering any of these.
And then if he sacks out on Phil's upkeep...
and then he gets to play the land for turn. Yeah, this is the only way Phil wins, I think, is if he goes to game 3. I cannot think of any scenario, because he needs a land to play cards and a card to kill things. So with him not being able to draw 2 cards there's no chance. So right here, Death Shadows, -6, -6.
7/7.
A -5 now, because we're going to go ahead and just silent clearing. Oh, no, he didn't negate there. I guess Phil's just going to figure out, is this lethal? Which...
So that's...
It's either Xaxes or just shy. Ooh, we got a Fatal Push.
14.
So we kill, obviously, a Death Shadow here. Right. But we're still taking a decent amount of damage here. Luckily for Phil, since he doesn't have anything with counters, Nizar can't just choose Hex Parasite to take off some counters from. Ooh. It's not a phenomenal draw there, because it's going to use one of your mana, and, now you have to hope to either draw another Fatal Push or another mana source of some sort. which is a Field of Ruin, and we're still sitting on Jay's Force Negation X. I don't think that's going to be good enough for Phil, but he might be able to pull it out. Nope, the last card was a dud, so going to go ahead and go to game 3.
Thoughtseize All-Star?
So for Nemzor, the K command couldn't have been forced. Nizar waited until the upkeep for Phil, and specifically Force Negation says you can only use its alternate cost on your opponent's turn. So Phil didn't have the 3 mana to hard cast Force Negation, and since it was not Nizar's turn, he couldn't use the alternative casting cost, which is why he waited until Phil's turn, which was even better for Nizar.
Alright.
Yeah, no, or else if Force Negation, if you could just do that anytime, it would. I don't want to say be a strictly better Force of Will since it can only target instants and sorceries, but it would be real close to being on par with Force of Will, which would just be too unfair, I think. So they did have to add that little clause in there of can only be on your opponent's turn, which is what got him there, missing those land drops. Or else, for sure, that Culligan's command would have got Force Negation, probably.
Alright, players are shuffling up. Phil's on the play.
Yep, this will definitely be interesting. Like, Nizar obviously definitely wants to be on the play because he can start ripping apart Phil's hand and then drop a creature, but I don't think it's like a huge, like, difference maker, like, say, the Infect Niv Mizzet deck we watched earlier, or even some of these other matches we've seen, like, say, Burn versus Infect, whoever's on the play is probably going to win. This one, I don't think it's too detrimental, but Nizar getting that extra card could be super helpful for him, especially with all the hand disruption.
Yeah, that's the big thing, right? Like, Thoughtseizes, Inquisition, things like that.
And
like,
Tide Hollow Scholars.
Yeah, so if there's a scenario where, if Phil gets stuck on lands again, and Nizar just Thoughtseizes away,
Gets
because
the
it just
hand apart.
strips the hand apart. Like,
Yep.
That's probably just.
Which, unfortunately, it's one of the variables in the game. Sometimes you just don't draw mana and then you can't cast spells, but it's part of life. So now we're both looking. They're both looking pretty hard at their 7-shine side, which Phil's hand looks pretty decent. You got a bunch of lands, unfortunately, but you got Thoughtseize, Street Wraith, Liliana. That's still pretty good right there.
I think that's the thing typically when you play a Death Shadow deck. As long as you have, maybe 1 or 2 fetch lands, give or take, your first fetch is probably the most important decision.
Oh, definitely.
In the deck. But from there, like, compared to Phil's deck, Phil has, I think, a harder time in terms of his mulligan decisions because of his lands.
Exactly. It's similar like we talked about with Matt with the 5 color. Like, when you start, like, going to 6, it's probably not too bad. Like, if you have to go down to 5, it's going to start getting real rough. Like, Nizar here, keeping a 4-lander is fine. He's on the draw. He has a Thoughtseize. He has a Street Wraith. He's got plenty of action, whereas Phil is going down to 6. He's down a card in comparison with Nizar going to 8. So it'll be interesting to see how this match goes, because if Nizar can land a threat and tear apart Phil's hand, that could be the end of it. But Phil could also just have, a nice sweet hand to bounce back and rebuttal with. We'll find out once we all get to take a look.
Nizar into a fetch shock for a Godless Shrine. Probably discard spell coming here. Cycle first.
Going to cycle first, yeah.
Makes
So like
sense.
maybe I get an Inquisition or something. Ooh, and we found the Death Shadow, so we're definitely on our way.
Thoughtseize, this is looking good.
As we get to see what we have here. Snap. Oh, that is not a phenomenal 6 for Phil. Because 4 lands Snapcaster Ice Fang, so your only real action is Ice Fang Kotal, and since that's getting taken away here, he's missing a free draw spell there. So now he just knows he has 2 mana and Ambush Viper. So unless Phil draws something to connect with the Snapcaster, it's just a 2-1. But it looks like Nizar here is just going to take the damage. He's going to hope Phil missed the removal spell, and He's gonna drop that Death Shadow.
Imagine-
Unless for turn he drew something that I missed.
He's definitely on like the race plan, right?
Oh, for sure.
He's got a Liliana the Vil.
Like
So-
he's gonna untap, get to Lily, like unless Phil like kind of drew perfectly there with the last draw step and this draw step. There's not much going on for him.
I think I don't know. I kind of don't want to do the favoritism thing, but I'm a very big Death Shadow fan. So
Well, that's fair because I would love to see Tamira go through because it's not your typical deck. Like
right,
we definitely will see Death Shadow. Mardu maybe not the favorite choice, but like Ice Fang Kodal and all that is not getting too much play in Modern right now, so it's pretty sweet. But Nizar just like fetch shock is just really starting to do the work there. And then the nice part here for him is he can either jam the Liliana and hope it resolves, or he also drew a Culligan's Command and he can wait and see if that shadow gets dealt with. But I like jamming Liliana because Phil had 2 draw steps to try to find an answer for her, and Force Negation's not an answer for her. So we would have had to specifically draw on like a Mana Leak or something like that if he even has them in the deck, which he only has 1, but we know that. Nizar doesn't know that, but you can pretty well assume that there's not going to be many good counter spells if you're seeing like Force Negation.
yeah. I think from here, depending on what Phil's drawing, like between the Death Shadow, the Liliana just starts taking over.
Oh, 100%. Like, especially because Nizar is just sitting out a bunch of lands, so he's fine with getting rid of lands versus Phil's hand. Like, if Phil's getting rid of lands, that means he's getting flooded and not drawing action. If he's getting rid of spells, that means he didn't draw lands. So Liliana can give you quite a bit of information. Dead of Winter, unfortunately, is just not good enough here with that Death Shadow being humongous.
The other thing we know is so Phil has 3 Cryptics in his deck. There's not one in sight.
Yep.
Like that's probably bigger game here per se for Phil to try and keep him alive.
For sure. And then the nice part is just with all the information, like Nizar knows 1 of 2 cards in Phil's hands at minimum, which is the Snapcaster Mage. So between the Lily discard and the Thoughtseize earlier, like he knows he's pretty set to do things because like right here he gets to take a free point of damage from the Silent Clearing to play the Captain Ranger to get some more damage in. Dash Shadow's gonna get turned sideways, and it like pretty much has to be dealt with here, or a lot of things are lethal for Phil.
Yeah, just I don't know. Like Phil's deck is cool because it's different. It's got a lot of different things.
I think the big thing is most decks, like having the Dead of Winter will be good enough. This is that one deck, Dead of Winter is not good enough as a board wipe. So him not having any like mass removal spells is what's getting him in this match. Like he has some spot removal spells, but they're just like not good enough against a deck that can buy back their creatures with Culligan's Command. I think similar to kind of how we watched in game 1, it almost kind of has to go like Phil's deck has to curve like almost perfectly like it wants to, whereas Nizar is just doing what he wants, which is I'm gonna look at your hand, play a Death Shadow. Did you kill the Death Shadow? No. Okay, it killed you. Because Phil is definitely in a weird position right now where he's probably gonna have to ambush Viper, and I still don't think that's good enough. Because you got 2 Death Shadows and a Captain.
And both Death Shadows are 6/6s right now, so.
And then with the Silent Clearing, they're guaranteed 7/7s with the lethal of the Captain. So unless Phil has Ambush Viper plus removal spell, yeah, like that Blood Moon, not good enough.
Yeah, it's way too late for that.
I
one.
can't see what the third card is, but unless it's a removal spell, it's not good enough.
It looks like a Dead of Winter.
Which,
could
like,
be
at least
mistaken,
here, you could. It depends on how big Ranger Captain of Eos is.
but- Oh, shaking the hands.
Yeah. Because even right there, Ranger Captain's a 3/3, so in order for the Dead of Winter to work, Phil would have to fetch going down to 7, which then he's just back to being lethal because Snapcaster comes in, blocks one of the Death Shadows, and then Phil takes 7s and dies.